panel for the 29th of April 2020. It is being conducted by electronic means. That sometimes doesn't work perfectly, so I'd like to ask everybody to be patient. We will run the meeting in the normal way, that is to go through the agenda and call on the speakers in each matter one by one. Then when those speakers are finished, if they wish, they may leave the meeting, and we will, as in our normal procedure, notify the decisions that are made later in the day on the council website as soon as may be possible. So I'll start by introducing the members of today's panel. My name is Paul Steen, I'm the chair. Other members of the panel are Ms. Jan Morell, expert member, Mr. Richard Thorpe, expert member.
Hello.
And Ms. Alison Small, community member. I ask the members of the panel to disclose any conflict of interest they may have in relation to each and every item on the agenda. Could they indicate to me if they have any conflict of interest by announcing that?
No conflict.
No conflict of interest.
From Jan Morell, from Alison Small.
No conflict.
And I have no conflicts of interest. So we'll start straight in on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is 248 Bronte Road, Waverley. And the first speaker that I have registered to speak, and I haven't seen her into the room, but I may have missed her, is Ms. Maura Main. Is Ms. Maura Main present? Can the moderator tell me whether or not she has been admitted to the room?
Chair, yes, I'm here.
Oh, good. I can see you now.
How are you? Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
For the record, your name is Maura Main, and you're speaking on behalf of the Charing Cross Village Precinct.
Correct.
Good.
Correct. I'm the secretary.
You're the secretary. Well, please go ahead with your submission.
Look, I haven't got an awful lot to add to the officer's report, which the precinct would support. I do agree with but I would like to just say that I think the DCP is a bit contradictory in this instance. You can still hear me. It is wanting preservation of the parapet, but I'm sure you've all seen the site. It is calling for preservation of the parapet, but it's also calling for infill. And sometimes I think the precinct would argue that it's better just to leave the heritage item alone. And I think Council's heritage officer has endorsed that by saying that any new works should be located to the rear as a linked pavilion form in conjunction with adaptation of the existing building. Particularly damaging would be excavation in this instance. We're not, it wouldn't be possible to prop that very fragile frontage. It's not, it's not a grand building. It's a very modest building. The whole site it's a very, very modest site. It's only 193 square meters. I would just ask, maybe this isn't something for the panel, but the family do live in the area. They've lived in the area for a long time and have contributed to the commerce of the area for a long time. And I think the precinct is keen to encourage them to stay, perhaps with more modest expectations of what their tiny site can yield. And we would ask whether maybe any further design advice can be offered to them, or if there's some way that we can all work together to achieve something for them. So that's really all I wanted to say, that the precinct is keen to encourage them, but keen to see something compliant.
Thank you very much. Does any member of the panel have any question for Ms. Main?
No, I don't.
No, thank you.
No, I don't.
Thank you very much. So the next speaker is Ms. Emma Rogers. Is she present?
Yeah.
Hello there.
Yeah.
So for the record, your name is Emma Rogers and you're the town planner.
Yes.
on behalf of the applicant, and I think that you have with you, if necessary, the architect, Mr. Matkovich.
Yeah,
I beg your
Matkovich.
pardon. He's the applicant, and Martin Bednarzik, the architect, available for questions if necessary.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you'd like to go ahead with your submission, Emma.
All right. Well, good afternoon, panel and audience members. As discussed, my name is Emma Rogerson and I am a town planner. I do have a PowerPoint presentation available if the panel would allow me to screen share it. Would that be an option?
I don't know whether we can do that or not. I'll have to ask the moderator whether or not that's you're able to do that.
Yep.
No, we don't allow screen sharing in this meeting.
Okay, no problem. I will just hold up some of my key panel pages, and hopefully that's
Okay.
adequate. So just in response to the previous comments, we would like to mention that it's quite unreasonable to request the complete retention of our site, considering only a portion of it is of heritage significance, with the majority being from later construction. We'd also like to respond by saying that we have a statement from a structural engineer confirming that the design is structurally adequate. And we would also like to confirm that any other redesign would have absolutely, unreasonable impacts on the landscaping to the rear of the site, in particular a significant tree, which we believe should be retained and is so under our proposal. So to continue my presentation, so DA 428 2019 concerning 248 to 250 Bronte Road in Waverley proposes a commercial premises on the ground floor and a modest single dwelling on the first and second. It has basement storage for use by the news agency underneath. The locality of the site is characterised by building heights of 2 to 3 stories with varying roof forms. Some of the buildings have significant parapets. Density generally exceeds council FSR controls, and commercial uses are common on the ground floor with residential or commercial uses on the first. The site itself is located within the Charing Cross Heritage Conservation Area and adjoins a heritage item along its southern boundary. The only element of contributory heritage significance, however, on our site is the front parapet, which we are completely retaining and celebrating in our design. It's also worth noting that there is a significant setback on the second floor between the proposal and this heritage item next door, as well as the heritage item having its own setback on the first floor and a blank wall too. In regards to the history of the application, although a DA was lodged in 2018 for the same site, which may have been similar in external appearance, it was for a ground floor commercial premises and 2 apartment units above. This was subsequently withdrawn.
30 seconds left.
Yeah, and redrawn. Would I be able to request an extension, please?
You've still got another half a minute to go. Do your best to finish, and
Okay.
if you need
So
a little bit extra, I'll let you have it.
Yeah, so we've subsequently redesigned this into a new DA. The scale has been significantly reduced to that of a commercial ground floor and a modest single dwelling above, with a decreased FSR and increased setbacks. We've also taken on board the feedback from objectors from the first objection, and further comments which have since been received from other objectors have also been applied
Time's
to
up.
the scheme. Yeah, would I be able to please request an
I'll
extension?
give you another 30 seconds to finish off. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, okay, so essentially our proposal exhibits a significantly reduced scheme, but this has still not satisfied council as further concerns have been raised, all of which under close examination are minor and could have been addressed by way of conditions of consent, deferred commencement conditions, or a request for revised plans if we were provided the opportunity. In the middle of the COVID-19 shutdown crisis on the 27th of March, the applicant was demanded to withdraw within just 7 days without opportunity to provide amended design, despite the support of the Design Excellence Panel.
30 seconds is up.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to finish off then, please, Emma?
Yeah, so we asked the panel to defer the assessment of the application to allow the client to submit revised plans. We believe that if this application were to be refused, then the client would then have to be, we would then have to reapply for a new DA. The client would then have to pay a $7,100 DA fee again, which would not give him justice when local council should actually be supporting small business in the current circumstances. We'd also like to just quickly show a few changes that we've made.
Look, I think your time's up. I'm
okay.
sorry. You've had an extension, so I think your time is up. But thank you very much, Emma.
Okay, thank you.
With this matter and with all the matters on the agenda, and I won't re-announce this, at the conclusion of the public meeting, we will adjourn and consider each item and notify our decisions on the council website as soon as may be possible. So the next application is 7 Alfred Street, Bronte, and is Mr. Michael McCormack in the room?
Sorry, Chair, I was noted as a person to speak on 248-250 Bronte
No,
Road.
I think, I'm sorry, that the way that we run these electronic meetings because of the difficulties is we only allow one speaker on behalf of the applicant. So I'm not going to hear from you, Mr. Outram.
Do the panel members have any questions for?
Yes, I should check on that. Do the panel members have any questions of Ms. Rogers?
Son?
I don't.
I just have one question, and you mentioned in the last breath that you are seeking a deferral of this matter. You know, we obviously can't accept new plans, even though you showed us something on the screen, but nonetheless, would those go to the questions that council's raised or the concerns that council's raised in its report?
Yes, so we have addressed every single concern that council has raised in the report, as well as the objection comments in our revised scheme.
But I mean, there's always the opportunity, you know, we've got a recommendation for refusal. We have to consider your request for a deferral, but nonetheless, of an section 8.2 review with an amended plan. You don't have to go back through the whole process again.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 7 Alfred Street, Bronte. And I was checking whether Mr. Michael McCormack was here. Is Mr. Michael McCormack present? Can the moderator tell me whether or not he has been admitted to the room?
Sorry, he's not in the room.
He hasn't turned up?
No.
All right. Well, he was the only speaker on this matter. So we'll pass over it and we'll consider Alfred Street later on. We move then to the next item, which is...
Hello, sorry, Chairman Steen. Hello.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry,
Okay.
we were having great difficulty getting on.
I'm
a better
sorry.
architect than I am a Zoom coordinator.
Yes. So Mr. Michael McCormack, architect on behalf of the applicant.
Look, we thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Look, we were here just really to answer if there are any questions from an objector and also if there are any questions from the panel. But also, can I confirm whether you received our late correspondence regarding just the landscape height control over the top of the garage?
I'm not sure about that. Can anybody answer that question? When did
that's
it
all right.
come in? When did you send it in?
It went Monday about 4 o'clock.
I haven't seen it, but I did notice there was a green roof proposed.
Look, I suppose really, I mean, all in all, we support the report. With one exception, we would like the panel, if they could, please, to consider not limiting the height of the green roof landscaping to only 200 millimetres. The reason being, and if you're able to look at the if you're able to look at the late correspondence, there's a photograph from the street view. But currently, the existing carport does a very good job of helping of screening the subject property from the property further to the west, and it also just it adds a whole lot of green to the street. So we didn't think that there was particular reason for this standard condition of 200 millimetres to apply. We thought that something along the lines of a metre maximum would be more suitable because it would give more landscape to the street and it would help both the privacy of both the subject property and the property towards the west.
Well, we'll check with the council staff whether or not that has been received, and if it has been, we'll be able to each consider it when we consider this matter.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask one question, which is related to the streetscape and the landscaping? Would the applicant have any objection to planting canopy trees along the street verge to the satisfaction of council's tree management officer?
Look, I think the clients would be happy to have, you know, 1 or 2 trees planted. We thought the bottle brush, which councillors put quite a bond on, we thought it wasn't a particularly great tree. We thought you could have something a bit more exciting there.
I would put canopy trees in that location. From memory, there are not wires along that long side bound.
I don't think there are wires along that side. I haven't specifically looked for them, but I know that we've been looking at that elevation for a long time, but I'm pretty sure there are no wires.
Yeah.
I mean, the clients are certainly keen to maintain a northern aspect. Okay. So
no, that's all right, but you could have
some sort of dialogue with council as to what tree would go in. Yeah.
Well, they could even be deciduous. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of Mr. McCormack from the members of the panel?
No.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCormack.
Thank you very much.
So this matter will be considered later when we adjourn. We can then move on to the next item, number 3, which is apartment 3, 28 to 30 Fletcher Street, Bondi. And Mr. Declan Hughes is here because I saw him earlier.
Hello, everybody.
Hello there.
Thank you for hearing us. I actually have Mark Solomon here, who I've asked to speak on my behalf.
Sorry,
Hey,
what's your name?
Mark Solomon. I've got a town planning consultancy called Planurbia.
Okay. Please go ahead.
We go ahead. Just to highlight a few inaccuracies of the actual planning report. The planning report notes that there's only going to be a setback of 600 millimetres. The actual setback, which is the landscape treatment, is around 1.2 metres from the side boundary. I think the planner's made a mistake by taking the 600 mil in the cross section as the structural wall for the easement that goes through there. So it's not going to be a 600 mil setback. It's going to be a landscape about 1.2 metre setback. That's consistent with the landscape setback and the balconies that run along that eastern elevation. So that continues. So if you have a look at your drawing, the site plan, you'll see that there is a landscape setback there with existing balconies that already exist. And that landscape treatment is going to be extended through 1.2 metre setback. Now that's an important element because it suggests that the setback is less than what it is. Now, with regards to the, I think the planner's made a comment about the impact of the streetscape. Now, the streetscape is already defined by what ranges between a 2.3 to a 2.4 metre high front fence, which is landscaped at the front. So that really sets the character of the building at the ground level where this work is going to happen. So in terms of streetscape impact, there's very little impact. Now, when you walk from the west of the site, what you see is the blade wall or the blade column that supports the upper level balconies. So as you're walking from a westerly direction, you won't see the proposed addition until you get in front of the building. Similarly, with the when you're walking from the eastern side, what you see is the high wall that runs along the boundary. All the views of the addition are very obscured. The only view you'll get is a very limited view when you look directly from the front of the property. Now, the picture that was taken in the report seems to have the camera that faces in an upward direction, which provides a much, it seems to suggest a greater impact than what actually will exist. Now, I think we need to be mindful that we can't take the, when you look at the elevation, the new addition sits behind that blade wall element. So it will be recessive. It's going to be obscured by the high wall of the front fence.
30 seconds.
Now, the impact, I think there's a suggestion that there's going to be a greater impact because of the reduction in setback. Now, that impact is already established by the existing setback, and all we seek to do is to continue the setback. It doesn't increase the impact. In actual fact, there's a neutral impact with regards to the setback from the property in terms of the development potential of the property to the south. If I could just finish off, the building will continue to be discernible because really the character is set by the 3 vertical bays. What you see basically is the upper levels, and the new addition sits behind those blade walls.
Time's up.
Oh, the FSR. Also, the FSR, I mean, it only represents 1%.
I'll just give you another, your time's up, so I'll give you another 30 seconds to finish off.
It only represents an additional 1% of the FSR. It equates to about 16 square metres, of which about 6 square metres is pantry, and 10 square metres is for the purpose of a study. Now, the client does have a growing family, and the space there at the moment is not functional. And so it's a balance between making what is currently a non-functional space into an internal functional space for increased amenity. 64 residents were notified. There were no submissions objecting to the proposal.
No.
We rely on a fence that already exists for privacy. So those things don't change. There won't be an increase in overlooking.
30 seconds up.
Okay. And it's supported by strata.
Thank you.
All right.
Are there any questions of Mr. Solomon from the members of the panel?
None for me.
No, I don't have any.
Ms. Morell, do you have any?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solomon. And Mr.
Sorry, can I
Hughes.
just say one further thing? If the panel thinks that further options can be introduced, we're happy to consider those too.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Solomon, and thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on then. The next item, number 4, also in Fletcher Street, Bondi, has been deferred to the next meeting. The next item is number 5, 14 Sandridge Street, Bondi. Now, nobody's registered to speak in relation to that matter, so we'll read later. So that moves us to item number 6, which is 246 to 248 Campbell Parade, Bondi Beach. And there are a number of speakers. The first one is Mr. Anthony Fitzgerald. I saw him earlier, I think. Mr. Fitzgerald present?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Excellent.
But I can't see you.
I'm on mobile.
Okay, fine.
So my apologies there.
No, that's all right. Now, just for the record, Mr. Fitzgerald, you're from apartment 24, 65 to 75 Brighton Boulevard, Bondi Beach.
That's correct.
Yes, please go ahead with your submission.
Sure. So, look, I really only have a couple of brief things to say. This is, I think, the 3rd or 4th time that we've been through this process and objected to the development because since the first application, which was knocked back by the council, there's really been very little change in relation to the issues that we're facing as residents of 65 to 75 Brighton Boulevard. And, you know, there is going to be, without question, without doubt, a material impact on my enjoyment of the property. There's going to be, in my view, a material impact on my views to the icebergs and Bondi Beach. There's going to be a material impact on the value of my property. And this is a property that I bought near on 15 years ago off the plan. And we've made the same objections now on a number of occasions. And I just, again, have to, you know, strenuously, vigorously object to the height of the application in particular and the impact that it's going to have on not just my apartment, but all of the apartments in our block and other surrounding blocks in the area. So, I just resubmit the same objection again.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. I'll check whether there are any questions from the members of the panel that they would like to ask you. So
Sure.
over to the panel members.
Thank you. No.
No, thank you. I don't have any questions.
No, I do not have any questions.
Alison? do you
Oh,
have any-
no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you.
So the process is that we'll hear all of the submitters today and then adjourn at the end of the public meeting and determine this and the other applications before us and notify them on the council's website. Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Ros Reid, a town planner from Urban Perspectives.
Yes. Yes.
Hello there.
Hello.
And you're Ros Reid, and you're a town planner on behalf of the owners of apartment 22, 65 to 75 Brighton Boulevard. That's Jonas Trober and Alice Finn, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I did provide a further submission on the 24th of April 2020, to which I draw your attention. I'm not sure whether you've received it.
Sorry, could you start again? There was some interference from a telephone, and I didn't catch what you said.
I did provide a further.
Now you've gone on mute. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Well, please start.
Yeah, I did provide a further submission on the 24th of April 2020. Yeah. I'm not sure whether you've received that or not. In that, Mr. and Mrs. Trober object to the reinstatement of the parapet because of the view impact. And this arises by interrupting the land and water interface, where there's the interest of the waves rolling into the beach and the swimmers in the surface. It comes over from a standing position over their rear boundary from their principal living area externally. It's to an iconic view, which is both state and nationally listed in the heritage aspects. And nationally, it covers Bondi Bay, the beach, the park, the headlands, the icebergs building, and the pool. And all of these aspects are aspects which are highly valued under the tenacity principles. The view loss arises at the expense of, or arising because of a perceived improvement of the streetscape and heritage value to number 246 Campbell Parade. But the streetscape and heritage values of the building, which are the subject of the proposed works, don't form part of the tenacity planning principle, and yet they completely colour the assessment provided by the heritage and the planning assessors. The planning assessment report is deficient because step one restricts what it considers to be an iconic view to structures, when tenacity principles makes it clear that, for instance, North Head is an iconic view. And step four is asks to whether a more skillful design can provide the applicant with the same development potential and amenity to reduce the impact on views. The assessment incorrectly assesses it by relying upon heritage provisions and streetscape relating to 246 Campbell Parade, rather than the development potential and the amenity relating to 246 Campbell Parade to the residents. It's therefore a flawed assessment. The heritage assessment incorrectly relies on an assumption that the Bondi Icebergs building
30 seconds.
listed, when in actual fact it forms part of the heritage listing, and it fails to recognise that the iconic view is more than simply that structure, it's the view as a whole. So therefore the recommendation for approval relies on flawed assessments by heritage and the planning assessors. The final aspect I just wanted to point out was that conditions 48 and 80, which are currently there, are not proposed to be amended by the council's report. However, they would,
Time's up.
if it was accepted, then they would be inconsistent with an approval because they limit the structures to RL 1919 and the height of the existing parapet. So you'd need to reassess those two conditions, 48 and 80, if you were seeking to approve it.
Thank you, Ms. Reid. Are there any questions from the members of the panel?
No, thank you.
No, I don't have any.
No, are there any more presentations on this matter, Paul?
Yes, there are. There's a further objectors, Matthew and Julia Hughes, and then there's also Luigi Rosselli for the applicant.
No, I'll hold my question for the moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Alison, was there any questions from you?
No, I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reid. So Matthew and Julia Hughes, are they present? Can the moderator tell me whether
we are
Matthew
present.
Hughes is? Ah, I see you there now. Thank you. So you both live at number 20, unit 23, 65 to 75 Brighton Boulevard.
That is correct.
Please go ahead, whoever is going to speak.
Sure. I think, you know, from Matthew and my perspective, and we also have our lawyer on the phone, I'm very confused about why we're here today. We've already been to court on this issue. We have had multiple viewings of our flats, multiple people from Waverley Council and others come through our flat multiple times, and the arguments still stand, as they did at the end of the court hearing last time when the applicants were told to remove the parapet. Yet here we are again today. It's very distressing. It's very costly both to us and Waverley Council, and it's very upsetting that we should have to go through this. Again, to repeat the points that were made last time, we believe that this is a vexatious claim because the parapets will just erode our views and enable the applicants to just put a top floor flat in because they'll already be able to argue that they've removed some of the views from us. This is our home. This is where we intend to live for some time yet, along with our neighbours, Jonas and Anthony, and enjoy a little bit of haven that we have in Bondi. As you can imagine, we work really hard, and to be able to sit down in our sitting room at the end of the day and enjoy the magnificent view over to icebergs is something that's extremely important to us, and we do not want to see removed. We feel the addition of the parapet only erodes further the fact that less people will be able to enjoy this magnificent view, because at the moment the view is shared by at least 6 flats, and it should be noted that at least 2 of our neighbours are unable to join the call today because of the nature of Zoom. So we're not the only people that feel this way. With the view sharing gone because of a concrete plinth, it adds absolutely no value to anyone looking up from the street, because what will they see? A fake heritage item that isn't even part of the heritage building that was listed when the heritage building was actually identified as being such. There are many reasons we believe why this fake heritage parapet should not be added. And yes, we have instructed our lawyer, Mr. Stephen Griffiths, who is here today to speak on our behalf. But those were some of the, I guess, emotional distressing consequences that Matthew and I are going through as a result of this second attempt to build up over and overtake the decision that was made by the courts.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Julia Hughes from the members of the panel?
I don't have any.
I'll just quickly add, if I can, I'll just reiterate.
Just quickly then, because the time is up.
I'll just reiterate, you know, it would have an absolutely massive impact on our lives. I for one, I'm a sort of a big surfer, and every morning I get up, look across to icebergs, and that to check if to go for a surf or not. So that's just adding to the fact it would have a massive impact on our enjoyment and our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Now, Mr. Luigi Rosselli, please.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, Stephen Griffith, I also registered to speak on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Hughes. Would you...
just a minute. What's your name?
Stephen Griffiths.
Can we check with the council, because I don't have you on my list. We had a protocol that we would only allow one speaker for the applicant and 3 speakers for the objectors, and we've had our 3 speakers now, so
Could you
I don't know whether or not.
1 minute just to speak on some issues that haven't been addressed by the other speakers of the objectors?
Well, I'm not sure, but would you be brief, Mr. Griffiths?
Very brief. I just want to
what is your address?
I'm a solicitor. I act for Mr. and Mrs. Hughes that you just heard from.
From who?
Mr. and Mrs. Hughes at 23/65 to 75 Brighton Boulevard.
Just a minute. So which unit are they in?
Unit 23.
Oh, that's the other solicitor for Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, are you?
Yes.
You have to get leave from me as chairman under our rules to hear anybody that's a lawyer. What is there a particular legal issue that's involved in this
one
case?
issue that I would like to take you to, in that the assessment report before the panel does not consider the reasons given for grant of the original approval, and section 4.561A of the Environmental Plan Assessment Act actually requires that to be undertaken as part of the assessment. The consent authority to modify a court granted consent is required to consider the statement of reasons given in the original grant of consent, and the assessment report before the panel does not do that. Nowhere in the assessment report will you find reference to the statement of reasons that was given to the court to allow it to make orders granting consent to the original development. I provided an email with my request to speak on Monday, which includes an extraction from the judgment from the original court matter, and Commissioner Smithson gives reasons for her making of the orders, which include that the amendment to the original application involved deletion of the top floor and also of the parapets, which are now the subject of this reinstatement application. Yet the assessment report has not considered that issue. And so it's expressly stated in the judgment that the reason for granting consent was the deletion of the top floor and parapet walls. Yet Council's assessment, which is before the panel today, does not deal with that matter. And that's
You've made that point three times so far, so I think we understand it.
Okay, I'm just making sure it's clear.
It's clear.
Good. So that's a flaw before the panel in terms of the assessment. The only other point I'd like to make, because the other objectors have spoken to you about view loss, is the heritage issue, which is given as the main justification for the parapet walls. It's worth noting that this building has existed for longer without the parapet walls than it
We know that.
with them.
We know that, Mr. Griffith. We're well aware of that.
Well, that's not presented to you in the report, so I think it needs to be said.
Well, it certainly was my understanding.
Also, that the building was made a heritage item after those parapet walls were removed. And so if I could lean on you to share my screen to show you a photo montage that is part of the...
No, I'm sorry, we can't do that. And look, I think you've had more than enough time.
30 seconds.
I shouldn't have allowed you to speak in the first place. So thank you for your submission, Mr. Griffith.
Much.
Now, Mr. Luigi Rosselli, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me well?
For the record, I can see you. That's Mr. Luigi Rosselli, architect on behalf of the applicant.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Please
Louder.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, obviously, I have to make a bit of a historical resume of this project. Some of the objectors' material was say that there was very little change from what it was submitted into court originally. There was 2 penthouses on top of that building which were added to pay for the cost of the refurbishment, the whole building. Those penthouses have not been approved and they're not resubmitted into this clause 4.55. And the only aspect which has been presented is the restatement of the parapet, which were part of a building and is documented in original photos tabled into the heritage report. This parapet must have been demolished in the 50s or 60s due to weaknesses, and they are a very important element of Art Deco architecture of this building and Cambourg Parade. So what has to be put in the bigger picture is this body corporate, they're little owners of small apartments, which they got together and they're going to spend a hell of a lot of money to refurbish a building for advancement of the heritage aspect of that existing building. And the views of the boulevard, which is 2 streets away, it's not directly behind the subject site, is another block away. The loss of views, it has been identified in a view impact assessment, is minuscule and mainly concerning the base of the icebergs. They have tons and square meters of water view, headland views, beach views, because it's the only apartment building which has been built above the heights stipulated for the boulevard. And so those number 22, 23, 24, they've got a privilege and they are very, very, fighting it very hard for it. But it is not in the public interest. The public interest is to have this historical building restored. Is in a terrible state. I don't know if you've been able to visit it, but it's
30 seconds.
It's in terrible states and needs urgently a total restoration and repair and refurbishment. So thank you very much, and I hope that the panel will understand the public interest point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Rosselli. Are there any questions from the members of the panel?
I have a question, Paul.
Yes, Mr. Thorpe.
Mr. Rosselli, I just want clarification because I'm uncertain. The parapet, I'd like to divide it into 2 bits, the central bit on the front and rear elevation, and then the general parapet. Is the general parapet being raised above what exists today?
No, it's only the parapet which is at the front and the back elevation.
Okay,
rising over the datum line of existing parapet.
Okay.
And it is designed to replicate the original drawing.
Yes, I see that.
We scaled the original drawing.
Right. Okay, and that central piece that sticks up at the both front and rear elevation, when we look at the photos submitted relative to view loss and everything, it's only those pieces that really cause a problem, correct?
Correct.
Right. Okay, I think that just clarifies it for me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any further questions from the members of the panel?
No, thank you.
I don't.
Well, thank you, Mr. Roselli. We'll, as with all the matters, at the conclusion of the meeting, adjourn and consider this matter. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 1 to 7 Kalua Street, Bondi Beach. And the first speaker I have is Mr. Gavin Shapiro.
Yes, thank you. Shall I start?
Hello, Mr. Shapiro. I can see you. And you're from 36 Simpson Street, Bondi Beach.
That's right.
Yes, please go ahead.
So my wife and I have our family home at 36 Simpson Street. It's a California bungalow, like many, which is too close to the street to fit off-street parking. So we rely entirely on on-street parking. We've also got our first child on the way in August. It's already extremely difficult to park in Simpson Street. I'm lucky if I can find 2 spots on that whole stretch of Simpson Street when I come home from work at night. And obviously it's going to be a lot harder juggling prams and shoppings and the rest, particularly if this gym is approved, particularly at the size which is proposed. So our concern is with parking, and the point, I believe, is that the FSR exceedance that they're seeking allows for a far greater building, which allows for a far greater number of patrons and greatly magnifies those impacts. So we say the only way to future-proof this long term and ensure patron numbers don't creep up and up over the long term is with a smaller building envelope, an FSR compliant one. And for the same reason, we say that the clause 4.6 objection shouldn't be supported because it gives rise to those very impacts. There's a few specific points I'd like to make on the traffic's report because I think it underestimates the likely impacts. It firstly relies very heavily on the plan of management as to the staggered classes and the number of patrons. But the plan of management in section 16 states that the manager may review and amend the plan of management at their discretion at any time. So of course on day 2, they can double or triple patron numbers, change the class schedules, all the rest. So again, we say, you know, there are conditions proposed, which I've seen, and I think they do go part of the way there, but we think the only way to ensure that long-term those parking impacts are managed is with an FSR compliant building envelope. It also uses a large parking catchment, you know, down to O'Sullivan Road, further down Old Southhead Road to justify the impacts. But the reality is they'll be heavily concentrated on Simpson Street, Kalua Street, Wellington Street in that little pocket. And the updated traffic report has not looked at that little pocket and the specific impacts there. It's just looked at the broad catchment. So we think it underestimates the impacts we're going to suffer significantly. And it also relies on what I think is wishful thinking that most people are going to walk. The reality is none of us know how many people will walk to this gym once it's up and running and who's going to go there, what the patrons are going to be. So again, we say for all these reasons, the only way to keep patron numbers down long term and mitigate the parking impacts is with an FSR compliant building envelope. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mrs. Shapiro?
Not for me.
No, I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro.
Thank you.
Is Melinda Wallace in the room? Melinda Wallace?
Melinda is not in the participants.
She's not here?
No, she's not.
Okay. And Nicolette Boaz in the room? I think I saw her earlier.
You see me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
So your name is Nicolette Boaz and you're from apartment 2,
Number
2
2
Simpson Street. 2 Simpson Street.
Which is incorrect in the plans. We are shown in the plans as being number 4 and the garage to our south is shown as being number 2. So it's actually incorrect on the plans.
Right. Please go ahead.
The proposed additional overshadowing. This DA casts a shadow across the entire nature strip and street and annihilates our winter sun from 1:30. The ground floor, and I have with me also number 1, and I'm also speaking on behalf of number 4 as well. So the genuine number 4 and number 1 and number 2, speaking on behalf of 3 houses. The ground floor unit of this building is a bedroom and office, which is the front of which is the only room that receives crucial warming afternoon sun in winter. The non-compliant FSR will not sit. The legislation says the non-compliant FSR should not be visually obtrusive and will not result in adverse amenity impacts. At the moment, we have sun in winter, and that will be taken away. It has a profound impact. The traffic impact statement. I'd like to read from the Council's traffic and development engineer, who concluded that on-street car parking demands will result in a severe reduction in the environmental amenity of neighbouring properties. The site is difficult to access by vehicle given the direction of traffic flow. The applicant's traffic impact statement fails to demonstrate that there will be no adverse impacts on the amenity of the locality as a result of the proposed development. Please visualise, if you will, a small street, as the previous speaker was saying, with parking on either side and access for only one car at a time coming or going. There is nowhere for construction trucks to spill, and they can't turn around. It is already terribly problematic as drivers do attempt to turn around, and this has caused many hits and runs of all our vehicles. Number one, upstairs, we've all had people attempting to turn around and run into our vehicles. This tiny street, the access and egress will be blocked for a year. You won't be able to go up or down with trucks. Floor space ratio. Compliance, we feel, should not be an option. This proposal represents a 6.17 departure from the FSR development, double what is legislated. They are asking to impose a medium-sized.
Go on.
If I may continue.
Yes, please go on.
If you're asking to impose a medium-sized business in what everywhere else in this mixed zone is a small business, it would be 14 classes per day, dozens of people attempting to park, and it says it's assumed that older people won't drive to the bottom of this steep incline, which is preposterous. They will. There is already no parking. The height in position, I just like to state from the legislation clause 4.4 that is supposed to ensure sufficient floor space can be accommodated within the Bondi Junction Centre. This is not Bondi Junction.
Could you just finish off? You're out of time, thanks.
And the scale of this development is entirely adverse to our residential street. 14 classes per day starting at 6 a.m. in the morning, finishing way after dark, 7 days a week, is disastrous for us as residents who have lived here for decades. Just to sum up, when assessing this proposal, we hope that you will strongly consider the points, especially the floor space ratio. There is no reason to change it. The overshadowing and losing our winter sun. The height in position where every other building here is no more than 2 floors. The obstructed street access for residents by construction vehicles. And that age-old problem, parking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Ms. Boaz from the members of the panel?
No, thank you.
No.
No, thank you.
Hi, Paul. Melinda Wallace was just here. Oh,
Yes.
she's here now.
Oh, good. Thank you. Melinda Wallace.
Hi there. Sorry, thanks. Sorry about that. I just had some childcare issues. Sorry, I was just going to support the parking issues that were raised earlier.
But can I just get some details? You're on Melinda Wallace from 309 Simpson Street.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes,
Thank
please
you.
go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just in support of the parking issues. We have been at this property now for a couple of years, and we find that a lot of beachgoers park in this street as there's some permanent parking here. When the pop-up Pilates shop used the parking, or used the premises that's being developed down the road, we did notice there was an increase in traffic just from using that gym kind of facility that was there, and a lot of people we see walking up and down the street with mats. So I'm just curious, the traffic report that had been conducted, the times that have been conducted on Mondays, and different times hasn't really been reflected, I don't think, of what a summer weekend period would be, being that this area is used for parking for residents, but also for a lot of people who use all day parking to go to the beach. We find that a lot of people do park here for long periods of time. And as the other gentleman said, we do have issues with finding car spaces on a regular basis. I've got a son, I've got to bring shopping home. We're not able to park in a driveway or anything here. So the collection zone of the other parking options that were available in the traffic report seem to stretch out quite widely. And for us to access some of those parking spaces would mean, you know, walking across Old South Head Road, for example, from Old Sullivan Road down where the golf course is, which isn't really feasible. So I guess my objection is just with regards to the traffic report that's been conducted. I'm not really sure that it's realistic. I've got plenty of photographs of this street being packed full of cars, you know, at all times of the day, during all different days. And it will have a significant impact on not only me and my family, but other people in this street who also rely on street parking just as part of coming home every day from work. So they're my objections I just wanted to raise.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Wallace?
No, thank you.
No,
No,
thank
thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wallace. Now the next speaker is Mr. Lee Cosnetta. Is he present?
Yes, good afternoon.
For the record, your name is Lee Cosnetta and you're town planner on behalf of the applicant.
I am, thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
I have with me in a virtual capacity the architect and to answer any questions if asked. They're watching on YouTube and we have a phone messenger service if need be. This proposal brings highly desirable commercial and recreational facilities to Bondi, and as a concept, this is strongly supported by council in their report. The building itself displays a high level of design excellence, it's appropriately built to the boundaries of the site, has active uses and engagement at ground level, and as a building form doesn't result in any unreasonable external impacts on surrounding properties or the locality. This is all strongly supported throughout council's report. Council also acknowledges this is a genuine gateway site, and as such, I'd say a scale of 4 stories is entirely appropriate. To condition the building to be lower than its neighbours is counterintuitive and undermines the urban design integrity of the corner. The site has a 13-metre height standard, 3.5 metres more than its neighbour, so the building should be prominent. A 3-storey form with a 4th level setback is entirely reasonable. The building complies with the height standard and the officer's report accepts that the DCP building envelope controls can't work here. The underlying sentiment in the report is that this is a great building and the use is highly desirable. Whilst the proposal does seek a significant variation to the FSR standard, the report clearly outlines the breach is entirely acceptable on the basis of planning benefit, that there's sufficient environmental planning grounds, it meets the zone and standard objectives, is in the public interest, including of the built form, with the exception only of traffic and parking. This issue is repeated throughout the report as the sole determinant reason for recommending the deletion of the uppermost floor so that reduced FSR would reduce patronage. I'd suggest that given the broad and consistent support for the building form and the use itself, the issue of patronage can be dealt with separately. Conditions of consent restricting gym patrons to a maximum of 30 adequately address the intensity issue. And I accept there should be a cap on patrons, but whether or not they're spread over 2 or 3 levels becomes irrelevant. In my view, the building form is so desirable and responds so positively to the gateway of the corner, it should remain as proposed, subject to capped patronage. That is my and the applicant's primary position. But if the panel don't favour that position, an alternate option would be to delete the uppermost floor space and to allow for a terrace that can be used that doesn't contribute to calculable floor space. This could be used by patrons on sunny days with capped patronage as an alternate space, not an additional space. This would then deal with the intensity and parking issue and may also bring comfort to the panel in reducing, numerical FSR non-compliance to the same extent offered in the report. Plans reflecting this outcome were forwarded to staff yesterday, but I understand it was too late for the panel or staff to consider those. This morning I've emailed council staff conditions of consent and the changes that would be required to facilitate either of those scenarios, which I'm happy to run through now or can be read at your leisure in your deliberations.
Time's up.
That concludes the 3 minutes that I had hoped to speak to. There were a couple of direct issues raised by the objectors.
Can I ask you to deal with those quickly? Can I ask you to deal with those quickly as you can, because your time is up.
Absolutely. In relation to the submission from Mr. Shapiro, the future proofing of the building to cap patronage by capping FSR, in my mind, it's a fallacy. The site allows for 388 square metres of floor space. That could, as a compliant development, accommodate far more than 30 patrons. We are happy with 30 patrons, regardless of floor space. The discretion to change the plan of management is, of course, bound by conditions of consent, and the plan of management cannot double or triple numbers on the second day, as suggested. The comment that the traffic report had wishful thinking in its consideration of the proportion of people driving to the site. In fact, our studies had 11 to 16% of people driving. The council suggested it was more like 40. We adopted 40, despite it not being considered relevant in our mind, and the parking capacity continues to work at council's assumed rate. We would wholeheartedly endorse the conversion of Simpson Street to a residential parking scheme, if that would help. We don't think that patrons are going to park in Simpson Street. It's the steepest and most difficult to park in, and if you miss a spot in Simpson Street, you are set to drive around a significant block to return anywhere near the site. So I don't believe patrons are going to be parking in Simpson Street. And in terms of solar access, the solar access diagrams demonstrate that all the surrounding properties continue to receive far more than compliant levels of solar access, and most no impact at all. That's my response on those submissions. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have as well.
Thank you, Mr. Cosnetta. Any questions from the members of the panel?
If I may, I just have a question. As I understand it, your primary position is the plans as we have them.
Correct.
And then your fallback position, for want of a better word, is to the deletion of the upper floor, but which is as contained in the deferred commencement.
That's correct.
Right. Now, I just have it's a bit of a technical issue, and I'll defer to you, Paul, in terms of the standard. The 4.6 has to be based on the plans that are the subject of any approval or refusal, whatever. The 4.6, I'm just querying, and I should have picked this up earlier, querying how you can have a deferred commencement that relies on the 4.6.
Well, I think we can discuss this later, and we can hear Mr. Cosnetta's reply. But we've done it on previous occasions where there's been an exceedance and a story has been removed, and it's brought it back to a position that the 4.6 could be upheld.
Well, anyway, I just raised that as an issue so that in terms of the application, then the other option, and I'm not putting this up as something that the panel has even contemplated, but would be for the applicant to seek a deferment. But that's all I wanted to raise. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Cosnetta, do you have any response to the issue raised just then?
You generally reiterate what you said, that it has been done in the past. I think for abundant caution, it would be worthwhile in those circumstances to seek an amended clause 4.6 written statement with the new numerics imposed within it. The justification itself has already been fully considered in the report, so I don't believe there's an issue there, and it would be of a reduced form, because if approved in its proposed form, the floor space is reportedly lower than was articulated in the SEE, and if approved,
that the 4.6 should relate to the plans.
I believe so as well. I think for caution, there should be an amended statement each time there's amended plans. Yep. That hasn't been the case in the past always, but I think it's a sensible addition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cosnetta. Any further questions of Mr. Cosnetta?
Not from me, thank you.
Not from me either.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next matter, which is 144 Warners Avenue, Bondi Beach, and is Mr. Alex Smith present?
I am, yes.
Thank you. Your name is Alex Smith. You're the architect for the applicant.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Look, the proposal generally complies with the relevant provisions of the DCP, whilst it exceeds in height and FSR of the LEP, but this is a result of the existing building that's some 80 years old. The existing roof will continue to maintain a hipped form, and the dormer windows proposed are subservient to the existing built form, and they will be compatible with the surrounding development. It will be actually difficult to see them from the public domain. Certainly not from the front, which is from the southwest. Even if you stand across the road against the concrete wall of the Bondi Beach car park, you still can't see it. And certainly not from the west, because it's blocked by the neighbouring building at 142 Warners. The dormers would be visible from the east, but from quite a distance, because you're going to have to stand back far enough to see them. And number 146 next door to us on that side has an approval for a building of equal height to this one. And if that was built, then the dormers wouldn't be seen from anywhere. I acknowledge the FSR exceeds the controls significantly, but that is because the existing building is already significantly over. These additions are contained within the existing roof envelope, and with the use of the dormers to make it viable. And council in their DCP is encouraging use of attic space. They've got a whole section on it. And we've made sure that we've complied with the DCP guidelines. There are so many examples of attic conversions in the immediate area that support this notion in all of the streets around it. The existing roof tiles, one of the issues that the report has is that we're replacing the tiled roof with a metal roof, which is something that, you know, we're happy to make as tiles, but the existing roof tiles and the roof in itself needs to be replaced. It's dilapidated, and in fact, existing roof tiles have blown off the roof when there's high winds on a number of occasions, and it poses a danger to the people entering and exiting the building. This is one of the reasons why the owners wanted to go with a metal roof, but as the planners don't support this, we've got no objection in replacing the existing concrete tiles with similar concrete tiles. The planning report says that the proposal is excessive.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Yet in terms of the DCP for attic conversions, the proposed floor area is below the DCP requirement of 50% of the floor below, and the dormer windows are well under the maximum 50% area of the roof elevation. The proposed small balconies are tucked into the existing roof envelope and will not be seen. The existing building has no balconies or private open space, such as many of the buildings of this era in this area are. And I really can't see how this poses a privacy issue. But again, I've just got one more sentence.
Okay.
These balconies could be reduced in size. The proposal doesn't cast shadows. It will barely be visible, and yet it plays a big role in improving the amenity of the building without any impact, and it reflects the desired future character of the area, and I do feel it's worthy of approval.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Smith from the members of the panel, please?
Not for me, thank you.
No, not for me.
And not for me either.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, that concludes this item. We'll move on to the next item, which is 101 Hastings Parade, North Bondi, and is Mr. Jeff Mead present?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair and panel members.
For the record, your name is Jeff Mead, and you're from Planning Ingenuity on behalf of the applicant.
That's right, planning consultant for the applicant. Yep. Thanks for the opportunity. This application is back before you as a 8.3 review application. It's back before you for two reasons. Firstly, we don't agree with the original assessment of the application, but secondly, we've made some further changes to the form of the application that was refused by council as a section 4.55 modification. I'd just like to quickly take you through the plan sheet starting at the ground level, just to explain very clearly what the application is, and then to go to our difference in opinion on the assessment of those changes. Starting at the ground level, you'll see at the front of the property an orange shade, which is essentially an enclosure of an area at the base of the stairs. That modification, as you'll see in the staff report, council don't raise any streetscape issue with the proposal, and so we say that that aspect is no cause for concern. Going then to the next level, which I'll deal with the rear at the ground level as well. There's two aspects to the modification. So firstly, there's a rearward extension, which is shown in orange shade again, where the balcony, which was approved, is extended from what was approved at 700 millimetres to 1500 millimetres. The purpose of that is to make it a more usable balcony size at both levels, the ground level, which is off the primary living area, and at the first floor level off bedroom 1. Council raises concern with this, yet I note that the rear setback requirement is 6 metres, and these balconies are set back even with the modification 11.5 metres. In our view, on any consideration of the privacy impact of those, when one is almost doubling the minimum DCP requirement, we say that there's no significant impact of that. You'll see also the properties on each side of this, even with our modification, extend well beyond our rear alignment, and obviously are much closer to their neighbours, to their rears. There's privacy screens provided on the sides of the balconies, so the view is essentially across our rear yard. If I can just indulge you to have a little more time. That's the rear balconies. In terms of the side, the increase to the sides, you'll see again in orange shade, there's addition of floor space on each side. The staff report makes very clear that the side setback requirements are still met by the proposal. It doesn't make very clear that large parts of each side are actually more than the side setback. So you can see the indents at the front and at the centre of each side elevation, which are almost double the side setbacks. The staff report makes clear that there's no shadow impacts of this addition, makes clear there's no privacy impacts, and makes clear there are no streetscape impacts of those changes on the sides. It also makes very clear that we're dealing with an application that fully complies with the side setback requirements. So we urge that there's reconsideration of the concern with those. Just one last point for the panel. The report seems to intimate that the original application complied with the wall height requirements, and this modification causes a non-compliance with the wall height requirements. That may be my interpretation, but that's the way I read the report. The original application did not comply with the wall height requirements, and this application does not increase the height of the proposal in any way. Maximum height remains the same. The main difference is that those side setbacks get closer and, as I said, remain compliant. The main issue that council raised about these sides is that the sides will increase visual bulk because they're not well articulated. You'll see in the original proposal, there was no articulation of the sides. It essentially ran on the same alignment from front to rear. This proposal brings articulation to the proposal by having the insets at the front and the centre, rather than just running the same alignment 20 metres down the site. So we simply don't agree that there's a bulk issue. There's a 4-storey flat building on one side of the property, which has a wall height that is several metres higher than this proposal. And on the other side, where there is a single-storey dwelling, we say that the additional 700 millimetres towards that side, which is the compliant setback, is no cause for concern when council are not raising privacy, overshadowing, or streetscape issues with the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Mead?
I don't have any questions.
No, thank you.
No, I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Mead.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item then, which is 42 Military Road, North Bondi. And the first speaker is Mr. P. Panson. Mr. Pence present?
Good afternoon.
I can't see you.
Oh, hello.
Oh, I can see you now, Mr. Panson.
Yeah.
Your name
Thank you.
is Paul Panson, and you're from Unit 244 Military Road.
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, that is a property that's co-owned by myself and my sister as a long-term investment property. It's currently leased to a local family with their young child as a long-term rental. I disclose that I'm a registered architect. My number is 6802 New South Wales. My concerns centre around a retention of existing landscaping. I would describe it as planting along the border, which directly faces our windows. Our primary concern is around the living room window. It's a 1-bedroom unit, incidentally, and to a lesser extent, our kitchen. We seek to see if we can reach a solution concerning this retention of existing landscaping, which is drawn and identified on the drawings and labelled, and we believe therefore it's a matter for assessment. And therefore we believe that there is a simple solution if that's possible. The planting is in 2 sections.
Can you take me to the relevant plan number?
Oh yes, of course. I've also marked up some drawings which I can hold up to the screen. However, the floor plan in question would be drawing, pardon me, a 010, which is titled Ground Floor Plan Unit 3, which is that one. Ground Floor Plan Unit 3.
Yeah.
And the most relevant elevation, which is basically what we see from our unit, is A024, and it's titled Northern Elevation. And it's this one.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you look at the design which is recommended for approval, there are 2 decks approved. They're roughly square in shape. One is slightly higher at 47.34. One is slightly lower at 47.17. The one that's attached to the dwelling, to the unit, will have a roof. It's called up as a pergola, but I assume it provides horizontal protection from impacts from adjacent. It has a screen which is along the boundary facing us. It's a screen which fills in most of the view towards us, which is well illustrated on the northern elevation, which is 024. And you can see that the existing planting has been shaded in reasonably accurately, so that there is a large clump of bamboo planting, and then there is a row of lily-pilly shrubs or trees, depending on.
Yeah.
The impact of the bamboo is directly opposite the living space, and the impact of the lily-pilly, which has already been considered in the report, is opposite the kitchen. The living is particular concern to us, and I'll go straight to an image, if I may, which will illustrate very directly what the impact is. So pardon my crude whiteout tape, but what you're seeing there is the larger black shape that's got the white tinge is the approximate outline of that veranda with the roof. The current planting now blocks out the sky, and if it's retained, this is the main living room in a 1-bedroom unit. And we see this impact as being superseded by the structure that will be approved, that is recommended for approval. Therefore, we question whether this planting serves any function going forward it is going to be wedged between a 3 metre high screen wall and a fence, which is on a right of way with about, I guesstimate 80 or 90 centimetres gap, which it will rapidly fill. So we would strongly request that that particular item not be retained, and if planting is desired, perhaps a more appropriate species like a Morea or a native equivalent could be put, with perhaps a 2 metre high from ground level limit. Further down, you can see that there is a lily-pilly hedge, which perhaps could also be integrated. We feel that perhaps we have less standing on that one, but we would strongly request that that strip of land, which is designated landscape on the plans, and rightly so, it'll still be a deep planting. If we could remedy this situation for the occupants, long-term occupants of our unit. We believe this can simply be done by condition and hope that the applicants will see our point of view and perhaps see the merit of it in the long term from their point of view with ongoing costs for the body corporate, because that strip of land is actually on the corporate title.
Thank you.
That is the essence of my argument, but just to illustrate further what it looks like from the applicant's side, in the report is a photograph taken from the back yard of Unit 3 of 42, and I've whited in approximately our windows. As you can see, the landscaping is quite dominant, and as you can also see, although we are the most proximate, we are well and truly blocked, and that blocking will be replaced by the screens to be approved. If you accept that that landscaping might be a softening device towards us, we have at least a 10-metre gap between us and those screens. We don't see it as being particularly necessary, and we have a vine-covered fence immediately in our foreground, bounding our property and the right-of-way. So we have a green foreground. There are many other green items in our
Right, thank you, Mr. Panson.
Thank you.
Any questions of this gentleman?
No, thank you.
I don't have any.
Thank you very much. So the next speaker is Mr. Tom Mithen. Mr. Tom Mithen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes. So your name is Tom Mithen, and
Yes.
I think you're the Strata representative. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
For the subject property at 42 Military Road.
Yes. I'm the owner-occupier at Unit 3, which is on the ground floor.
Yes.
And there are two other owners within the strata, but I represent the strata as a whole. So
please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I just want to talk firstly just quickly to the view impact issue. The reference made earlier by the submitter that to the existing vegetation, I think it's quite clear on the plans that there is information there showing on the survey the level of the windowsill, say the living room window, and also the level of the height of the privacy screen on the lower deck as amended. So there's a condition in the planning report that lowers the height of the privacy deck by 170 mil. So you can see that anybody sitting or standing in the living room, their eye line would be above the height of that lower privacy deck. So I just wanted to point that out for you. Can I just also talk to a few conditions?
Yes.
The first one is condition 2A, which requires the removal or deletion of the louvers at the front. If I could just take you to figure 1 on page 457 of the report.
Yes.
You can see the front elevation of the building. Those rooms are bedrooms, and you can see the inside they have internal blinds or curtains. That's what you see from the street. It's pretty hard for the body corporate to try and control internal fixtures. So we've suggested to put louvers, which would tie in with the overall colour scheme that we're going and look that we're going for the building. And the louvers we feel would allow more light, because otherwise you'd have to have blinds or curtains or whatever closed most of the time to afford that privacy, whereas the louvers would enable privacy and light at the same time. And also we believe that they provide articulation to that elevation. The other condition I'd like to refer to as condition 9 in relation to laundry facilities. I'm not sure why that is there. There's no changes to
30 seconds.
No changes to the laundry facilities on page 474 of the report. Condition 9. That's not sure why that one's there. And then there's condition 24 on page 477, which is asking for a certificate of survey for the levels. We're not proposing any changes to the building itself, the levels or the height or the setbacks. So I guess we'd like to ask that those conditions are taken out from the recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Mithen?
Yes, just in respect of condition 9, are there currently laundry facilities?
Yeah, every apartment has its own laundry facility.
Right, that's okay.
Any further questions?
What about drying facilities?
Drying facilities, dryers.
Not very sustainable.
Yeah. So I think they've all got dryers, but no actual drying clothesline, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, is there an opportunity anywhere to put a clothesline?
Do you mean communal?
Yep.
Not really, because on the northern side we've got a driveway, obviously not the front setback, and the side setback is part of the ground floor unit to the rear and to the south. So there's no real opportunity for communal clothesline.
Any further questions?
No, not for me.
No. No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mithen.
Okay.
We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is further up Military Road, number 220 Military Road. And the speaker I have is Helena Rubenstein.
Yes, that's me.
Hello there.
Hello.
And you are the town planner from GSA on behalf of the applicant.
That's correct.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to address the planning panel. As you mentioned, I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. If the panel does allow it, the architect Christina Gomez has also registered online and is available to answer any sort of architectural or technical queries. Firstly, we are in support of the council officer's favourable assessment. We accept the recommendations made in that report and do not wish to challenge any of the conditions. As you would be aware, amended plans were submitted in response to issues raised by the council, which provided more clarification to the drawings as well as the clause 4.6. This DA is for alterations and additions to a dwelling that has the following attributes. It is permissible under the existing use rights provisions of the Act and regulations. It complies with the FSR control. The proposal complies with the majority of DCP provisions in respect of setbacks, landscaping, open space, car parking and solar access. And the proposal will transform a dated structure of limited street appeal into a contemporary dwelling house that will improve the streetscape appearance and will also be compatible with development in the locality. To justify the contravention of the building height standard, a written request under clause 4.6 of the LEP was submitted, which council deemed to be well founded. The proposal has a building height that is compatible with surrounding development in the street. The area of height exceedance will not be readily visible from the opposite side of Military Road, given it is replacing an existing pitched roof and is designed to improve articulation to the street facade. The proposal has also been designed so that the roof over the first floor level facing Military Road is well under the LEP height limit and is lower than the existing pitched roof that it is replacing. So the non-compliant portion of the dwelling is set back at the top level. When compared to the existing situation, the removal of the existing pitched roof at the front reduces the perceived bulk at the top level, which minimises visual impact from the street. This comparison is best demonstrated in photo montages prepared by the architect, and that is identified on GA 4.00 of the amended set. That will show the existing building in the street and comparing it with the proposal. So importantly, the dwelling doesn't create adverse view, privacy or solar impacts. So for the reasons stated above, we request that the panel consider a favourable recommendation in line with the Council Officer's report.
Thank you, Ms. Rubenstein. Are there any questions of Helena or of the architect, Christina Gomez?
No, thank you.
No, none from me.
Well, thank you very much for your submission. There are no questions, and therefore I think that's the end of the public meeting. I'll thank all the speakers who have addressed us during this time. It's not easy to do it this way, but it seems to be working reasonably well. And I thank you all for your submissions, and I'll close the public meeting at 1:38. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.